Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. Today we're going to be looking at the G&G ARP9. I've chosen to have a look at this one because it's one of my favourite airsoft replicas. This particular one of mine I've had for quite a while now. I've used it in more games than I can count. It's been used in all kinds of weather. I've used it in snow, I've used it in rain, I've used it in hot weather, cold weather, summer, winter. Whatever I throw at it, it just keeps working. It's just superb. I could talk for hours about how good I think this is, but I won't do that today. I'll just give you a brief overview of it. Now, it's in the style of a 9mm AR, if it was in the real steel world. So the control layout is very familiar to anybody who's used to using AR base. You've got your selector switch on the side here. It's not ambidextrous, it's only for right-handed on the controls, but you know, it is simple controls. It's well made, it's well put together. The looks might not be to everybody's taste. It's in a PDW style, it's very short, you can one-hand it. You could use it near enough like a pistol if you so choose. But for that reason, that's what makes it so good. You can use it in field games, you can use it in CQB, use it indoor, outdoor. I mainly play outdoor. My local field, I'm in the Highlands of Scotland, so I tend to play in a very large forested area. So this is more than adequate for playing in a forest. It certainly has the range. Some of the people I play against and play with, they have, in some cases, more expensive airsoft replicas, or certainly longer barreled replicas and larger replicas, and this can outrange them. It's very accurate. The hop up on it is superb. The rate of fire on it is superb. It's just all around good. Now, the reason I'm looking at this today from an affordable standpoint is that I do think it makes a basis for a good starting loadout, because you can do anything you want with it. You can leave it with the iron sights, and like I say, you don't need much to go with it. But we'll cover that in a minute. So let's just have a quick look at what you're looking at when you get an ARP9. So the primary construction of the ARP9 is polymer. Most of the upper and lower receiver is polymer. Your pins are metal. Any screws on there are metal. Comes with an M-lock rail, so you can fit any kind of M-lock attachments you want to that rail. I tend to run with M-lock 20mm rails, so I can put all my other accessories I've got onto this replica as well. The M-lock is metal. The upper rail, 20mm rail, standard rail, that's metal. Charging handle's metal. Your iron sights that come with the replica are metal. The outer barrel obviously is metal. And then all your pins and the rails for the PDW stock, also metal. Dust covers metal. Inside you've got a version 2 gearbox, which is one of the most common types of gearbox. So all the upgrades you can imagine that are available for any AR based rifle are also pretty much compatible with this one. Now if you look online, you'll see that a lot of people, they really do some amazing builds on these ARPs. There's some very nice builds knocking about on the internet. But the reason I've chose this one is because this is one of the few rifles that I've got that I've never done anything to it. I've never needed to do anything to it. As I've said, it just works. The rate of fire is great and the range is great out of the box. So I have no complaints with it. If you want to fit anything to it, you can pretty much fit anything you'd fit to an AR. Obviously you've got the constraints of the size of the rail, but it'll still take all those. You can fit tracer units, different flash hiders, you can fit suppressors, whatever you'd like. It's a 14mm counterclockwise thread on the front here for this sound enhancer, which brings me on to the next thing I like about it. It makes an amazing sound when it fires. It's a very aggressive sounding airsoft gun. A lot of my friends, when I'm up at the site and when I'm playing, they always comment about how loud it is. So it's not really very good if you're looking to be stealthy, because it does make a lot of noise. It's very loud, but again, that's something I like about it. So if you were looking to get one of these, in your loadout and you're looking to start out, they retail around about £200 British pounds, sometimes under £200, which, you know, is a good mid-range level to be paying. But it's a rifle, like I said, I've used it for years. It's never let me down. I've never need to do anything to it. All you need to do is occasionally clean the barrel. This rifle does come with a MOSFET and an electronic trigger unit as standard. It is a rotary hop-up unit, which is accessible behind the dust cover. When you pull the charging handle back, it pulls back the mop bolt and you have a rotary hop-up unit, which again is a very nice hop-up unit. I mainly use 0.25 gram BBs when I'm playing with this particular rifle, but people I know, they run these with weights much greater than that, and it has no problem hopping those BBs at all. But just in my case, I choose to use 2.5s. If you wanted to have a bit more space to shoulder the rifle, you can extend out the PDW stock. It extends to just the right length to make it comfortable. Now when you buy the rifle, you will get one of these high cap magazines with it. They're polymer. They've got the wheel on them to wind them up. They're in the style of a 9mm pistol magazine with a 9mm AR. Now one thing I would say that we'll get into in a minute is these magazines are fine. You can get them in a mid cap. They're not the cheapest magazine to buy. I do believe there's an option that there are some other magazines that are compatible. I don't use those, however. I stick with the G&G high caps and mid caps if I'm going to be running these 9mm magazines. Now if you were starting to load out and you get this magazine with it, there's no problem in just running the magazine that comes with the rifle. You could run that one. And if you do choose to run that one and you're struggling to get it in a trouser pocket, or if you're struggling to get in a jacket pocket because they are quite long, you can get mag pouches that will fit them. My preferred mag pouch is the Viper Tactical MP5 mag pouch. I found that the MP5 mag pouches, although made for an MP5 magazine, they fit these ARP9 magazines no problem. And they're quite snug in there. I've run around many a day, never lost a magazine out of that pouch. But sticking with the affordable, if you don't want to have to buy mag pouches and things like that, and you just want to run this as is, you know, without a rig, without a combat belt, without a plate carrier, any of that kind of thing, if you just want to run it in a hoodie and jeans if you so desired, what I'd strongly recommend getting is the G&G drum magazine. Now, this is going to add some additional expense. These retail normally around about the £60 mark, so they're not cheap, but they are superb. They just feed. They're very simple to use. Open a little window at the back there, pour your BBs in, no speed loaders or anything, and then just give it a wind until it's tensioned up. Now, depending on how trigger happy you are, this will continue feeding at full auto, no problem. But if you aren't being trigger happy, I could have this drum magazine last me near enough a whole day without ever having to reload. So you don't have to change magazines. If you are trigger happy, this drum magazine can near enough turn this rifle into a support weapon. It's just got an amazing rate of fire. The drum magazine never misses a beat feeding. You can put a lot of rounds down range if you're using one of these. So I do recommend one of these. It is a well worth buy. And again, if you're going with the affordable slant, you buy the rifle, you buy the drum mag, and then that's your loadout. All you're going to need for it next, because it doesn't come with one, is a battery. This is the battery I would recommend. It's the Nuprol 1100 milliamp hour 11.1 volt LiPo. It's a stick LiPo. The reason I recommend this one is this is the battery I've found that fits with no issues. It'll fit in the stock with no problem at all, as standard. To put the battery in, you do have to remove the PDW stock, and what you'll find is that you've only got pretty much that space to fit your battery in, which is, you know, as you can imagine, it's not a lot of space. If you're concerned about it only being 1100 milliamp hour, I can have two of these last me a whole game day, and again, no problems at all. I have run it with only one of these, but that you are pushing it with that. I would say for a full game day, if you're only going to be using this particular replica, if you have two of these, that should last you a whole day. And obviously you would want to have a LiPo balance charger if you've not run LiPo batteries before. It's very important to take care of these. Now in a future video I will go through the different kind of batteries and have a look at the best way of charging these up, how to keep them in good condition, and how to ensure they don't get damaged or indeed damage your replica. So we'll look at that another time, but for now that's the battery you want for this particular replica. Okay, so there's a brief overview there of what you get and what it is, and like I say, it's good fun to use. I can't recommend it enough, and if you want to do things to it you can, but in this video we're not going to look at taking it down. In future videos I'll show you the inner workings of one of these. I'll also go into the version 2 gearbox a little bit more and show you upgrades and things you can do yourself. But with this particular rifle we're just focusing on someone just getting a rifle, being able to go out and play, and it being very reliable and just working for you. So moving along with, as we said, a brief guide and some tips and tricks with this. I'm going to show you a few things that are a bit of a downside to it. There's not a lot of downsides, but as I've already mentioned, these magazines are fine, but they do have a nasty habit of starting to misfeed. After you've had the replica for a little while, if you've used it a few times in game, you'll find that the magazine will work fine in semi-automatic fire, but as soon as you flick over to full automatic fire you'll get misfeeds. So you'll find that it won't feed every BB. Now I have read online that there is people who've been successful in dismantling these magazines and making them feed more reliably. I haven't tried that myself yet, because I went with the other option. You could go with mid caps. I believe those feed without an issue. So if you choose to go with mid caps, that's an option, but obviously you're not going to have as many rounds to play with per magazine, but again they'll work fine. The option I went with is the drum mag that I mentioned. Now this drum magazine will have no problems feeding. I've never had an issue with that feeding on full auto or semi-auto. It's simplicity itself to use, and to be honest you only really need one of them for a day's gameplay, because it's very easy to reload it. There's a lot of rounds in there if you're going to get to using a lot of full auto. So yeah, I went away from these and went to the drum magazine, which is why I'd recommend it. The next drawback we get to that a lot of people ask me about is the batteries. I get asked about this a lot. I know quite a few people who run this particular replica or the 5.56 or similar. What they have problems with the MOSFET and ETU that's fitted to these rifles. It's an intelligent MOSFET. The advantages of that are great in that you get better trigger response, the usual advantages of MOSFET, but also it's programmable for 3-round burst. But it does have LiPo protection built in, so it has a cut-off basically. If the voltage gets too low, to prevent your LiPo battery getting damaged, it'll basically stop the power, it'll cut the power. A lot of people have come to me and said my rifle's not working, and they can't figure out why. The first thing I always ask is, are you running a 7.4 volt LiPo? If you run a 7.4 volt LiPo in one of these, there's a good chance it either won't work from the start, or it'll work for a very short time and then you'll just get nothing. You'll just get a dead trigger basically, and nothing happening. And the reason for that is because the 7.4 volt batteries, it seems very sensitive on the MOSFET, and the way around that is to run an 11.1 volt LiPo, which is the one that I run. This will run all the time until obviously the cutoff cuts in at the correct time. So remember to run an 11.1 volt battery. That's the best advice I can give on it. The other problem is obviously space. The space you've got to play with is you take that cap off by pressing the little button at the bottom, remove the MOSFET, which is this section here. So that's your MOSFET, that's an inline fuse. I've changed mine out to Dean's connectors. Now you will get a Mini Tamiya connector as standard. A Mini Tamiya connector is fine. If you're just starting out, your batteries will come with Mini Tamiyas normally. I'm going to do another video, as I say, in the future about the different types of connectors, how to change your connectors out and the advantages of different connectors. But for now, that's why mine's got a different connector on it there. So obviously, you don't want to be pinching these wires, you don't want to break these wires, you don't want to damage your solder joints, you don't want to damage the MOSFET itself, the PCB, the printed circuit board, you don't want to damage that. So that can be a drawback. You've got very limited room as to where you can put your batteries in this. But what I found is with this particular battery is that it does fit. So that's why I'd recommend this battery. It's a common complaint. I can't fit my batteries into my ARP9, and that can cause you a bad day on your game day if you're fiddling trying to get your batteries in. Practice at it, practice getting the battery in before you go, and then it's easier when you get there. Don't leave your batteries in, because obviously you're going to be running lipos. So that's the battery in. This rifle has no BBs in it, it has been cleared, it's pointing in a safe direction, and there's no magazine in there. So just to give you an example, it is such a nice noise on the replica. You know, I can't recommend it enough. But that's how you get your battery in. So your battery's in. When you're taking the battery out, again, you don't want to pinch wires, so try and pull it by the battery pack, not the wires. Disconnect your battery, which with Dean's can be quite fiddly. That's your battery disconnected, and then when you're finished for the day, you can pop your wires back in neatly again without pinching them, without damaging them, and put your end cap back on. So yeah, so that gets round the disadvantage of that. Everybody always goes on about the batteries. Using 11.1, use the battery that I'm recommending. That's the best one I can recommend, and it will fit. And as you saw, it's once you've done it a few times, it's not that hard to get the battery in. Now, another drawback to this replica is I've discovered rust. You've got your rifle, you've been out for a day, you might have done what I've done a few times, you've been out in the snow or heavy rain, you come back and you just put it away. If you just put it away, there are spots on this replica that can rust, which obviously doesn't make it look very nice, and unless you're into that kind of thing, you know. But from my point of view, I like to keep my replicas looking as good as new, really. So if you're the same way as me on that, then what I would recommend is pay close attention to the iron sights. Those are metal, they will rust. Pay attention to the screw heads, nuts, bolts, pins, all these metal components. They can all have a nasty habit of developing surface tarnishing, which is like a brown residue like rust, which eventually will turn into full-blown rust. The rails on this PDW stock are particularly susceptible to it. So all I would do at the end of the day, get yourself a rag, wipe down the replica so it's dry if it's got wet, and then apply a little bit of silicone oil to the metal parts, and then give it a rub down with your rag. You can put silicone oil on the main body. The reason I say to use silicone oil is you want pure silicone oil because this is a mainly polymer build. There is metal on there, but when I'm dealing with polymer or plastics, I don't want to take any chances, because petroleum-based oils, they can react with the plastic and effectively eat the plastic. They'll tarnish it, they'll melt it, make it not look very nice overall. What I'll do is I'll put a link to the type of silicone oils that I use. I tend to use remote control shock absorber oil, which is brilliant. It comes in different weights. It's not very expensive, so you can get different weights, which means you've got different thicknesses, so you can get runny oil for some tasks and thicker oil for others, like if you're working on a gas blowback. You know, so yeah, that's what I would go with. Certainly go with silicone oil, give it all a wipe over. Mainly the metal parts, but you can do the whole thing if you want to make it look shiny, but obviously it's going to be a bit oily. But that will just keep it in good condition. But it's the only one really that I've had any major issues with doing that. It's these rails primarily, they tend to rust up, which is not good. So if you keep it oiled up, it'll be great. And like I say, from an affordable standpoint, if you're just getting into the game and you want to play, you can't go far wrong with the ARP9. It will just work. It is a lovely little replica, and I can't recommend it enough. And it will just work for you. Like I say, I've had this for years, and you know, it's never let me down. Any kind of weather, it just works, and it's so much fun. So if you enjoyed the video, and if you like the information I've given you there, then drop me a like. Maybe subscribe. I'm going to be working on some of the replicas that I have. I'll be showing off some more of the replicas that I have, showing off some of the modifications you can do. We'll get a bit more in depth at a later stage, but at the moment I'm just trying to get us going on the type of things that we're going to be looking at. If you want to drop us a comment and let us know what you think of the ARP9, if you've got one, if you like it, or if you have any other questions about the ARP9, or if you have any questions about airsoft in general, just drop me a comment and I'll do my very best to get back to you. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.